Hello, NeuFit Nation. Welcome back to episode 100. This is our three-part recap series looking back at the biggest insights, biggest lessons from our first 100 episodes. Part one, hopefully you've listened to it already, is on the biggest clinical insights that we've covered. And then this, part two, is going to be more business-oriented. We've seen how the newbie and this neurological approach has changed rehab and performance, but some of the most exciting content that we've covered has been in the realm of business, looking at how practitioners are not just improving patient outcomes, but building thriving, sustainable practices. And so in this episode 100, part two, we're diving into some of the biggest business lessons that we've covered so far, from talking about cash-based models to redefining the role of physical therapy itself. If you're a clinician, business owner, or entrepreneur in this space, these insights could change the way that you think about running your practice. We're going to hear from real business leaders on topics like marketing and branding, scaling your business, positioning, building a team, and more. So now we'll go into our first clip, which is from episode 80. It's with Angie McGilvery, the co-founder and co-owner of Apex Physical Therapy in Fort Myers, Florida. And in this clip, she shares her vision for physical therapy, what it can be. And she talks about how physical therapy can be a primary care practice, like we think about a primary care physician. So she talks about how in their practice they have next level diagnostics and then treatments like the newbie and then ongoing performance training and optimization and rehabilitation and this more holistic approach. They're all within their scope of practice. But I love hearing her talk about this. I'm excited to share that with you. And then she also, in the second portion of this clip that we're going to share, talks about her perspective on marketing and building a brand and establishing their brand as this primary care practice and building that brand, and talks a little bit about how she approaches social media in order to do that, in order to establish their identity. So here is Angie McGilvery from episode 80.
Another piece of primary care model, right, is that, again, when you think about when you establish a primary care physician, this is somebody that's like your go-to expert, right? It's not like you go see them one time, you get discharged, and you don't go back and see them, right? Like that's like your person. And so in establishing your primary care physical therapist, we should be your person for, again, musculoskeletal, not only pain and injury, but prevention and optimization. And that's the other side of our scope of practice that not only has NeuFit allowed us to step into through strengthening, conditioning, athletic performance, but also the other side where we look at optimization. And through Live Resilient, we do some pretty cool modalities like infrared sauna, cold plunge, a sensory deprivation salt tank, some nutritional counseling that's stacked on with some DNA testing. So trying to look at that holistic, view of our patient, again, as a primary care provider, and yet still what remains under our scope of practice as physical therapists. The marketing platform has to start with your why, right? And so I encourage, other owners or other practices, other providers listening, knowing that why and being able to very clearly articulate that is the foundation for where your marketing strategy begins. And also looking at, I think it's important for us to understand, because I didn't get any of this in PT school, right? I didn't learn how to market or how to run a business. This has been through, the 20-something years that I've been trying to navigate this course. And the thing that I've learned and taken away is the difference between marketing and sales. And that is a foundational piece when we start to look at how do you market your practice? How do you market? Marketing is all of the wonderful things that you get to do that leads to a sale, right? That leads to that transaction. And in my world, a sale is a life changed, right? So what are all of the things that I'm going to do from a marketing perspective that are going to allow me to change a life? And So we can start diving into social media, because I think that that's probably the place that a lot of other, I know, PT practices struggle is social media, because you hear every other Con Ed or whatever it is, and it's like, how to get more new patients, social media marketing. And if you hear that, like, like, how to get more new patients is selling, right? Like new patient selling. Social media marketing, no. Marketing is social media, is building your brand. It's telling your story. It's allowing people into your world of what's happening, in your practice, in your community. What do you stand for? What's your purpose? And so that's where I challenge, and I know a lot of people are like, I just don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. You're already doing it. I promise you're already doing it. You do it every single day in the four walls of your practice. You just now have to start telling the world about it. And so some of the small little finite strategies that we use, I have two amazing people on my team that one of their roles is to go through the clinic and video on their phones. It's nothing fancy, nothing that costs a ton of money. And they video what's happening, and a lot of it is, again, you going back to changing lives, right? Look at patients whose lives were changed today. Just capture that, right? Build the brand.
One thing that Angie said is that marketing is everything that leads up to the sale. Now we're going to transition in this clip to talking a little more about the sales process itself, specifically about clear and compelling messaging to patients. This is from all the way back in episode 8. Jason Waz was my guest, and he is the owner of Competitive Edge Performance, a physical therapy clinic in Tampa, Florida, and also does coaching and consulting for other practice owners now. He's been able to free up enough of his time to where he can focus more on helping other practice owners do what he's done, build a practice that essentially runs without him. And in this clip, he talks again about clear and compelling messaging so that his junior clinicians can be just as effective as he was as the more experienced owner. This allows him to free up his time and make them more consistent and get patients buying in very quickly here. So we'll go into this clip from episode 8 with Jason Waz.
Second thing is find a practice differentiator. And how are you different? The newbie is I've been a PT for 25 years. I've never found a practice differentiator like the newbie. And I'm not telling your audience anything they don't know about how it works, and then it's just simplifying the message. Like throughout 2018, 2019, in my practice, we started developing what we consider protocols for the newbie. It's not the same thing that you teach in your course, not how to use it or why it works or how it works, but trying to simplify things in the physical therapy world to where I could train any new staff member, any new clinician that comes in, and within a couple days, they'll be able to give the patient the same results, the same message, the same ethos about what we're doing. And what I tell all my practitioners and what I do is when a patient comes in the first day, we need to give them that message about how can we help them better. And we always introduce the newbie and how we're unique in using it. And I tell the therapist to give them 3 main points. One is make sure you map the patient day one, because you're going to talk about how we can find 2 spots on the area of your body that's a problem and find those spots with 100% accuracy. Most of the time, patients are never told 100% you're going to find something that works or doesn't work. They're like, oh, we'll have to give it time or we'll have to see how it goes. So tell them you're going to find 2 spots with 100% accuracy. And we know that users of the newbie, we can do that because the patients tell us where they feel it the most, right? The second thing is within 4 sessions, and we've done this through tens of thousands of cases, within 4 sessions, if we're just following the protocol like we're taught, you absolutely will have a positive response of some sort in those first 4 sessions. So immediately the patient's thinking, you're gonna find the spots with 100% accuracy. You're telling me within 4 times I'm gonna be feeling better. And then the third thing is I tell them anybody in my practice that is trained in using this can reproduce those results. So think about me as a practice owner. Usually the practice owner is the one that patients always want to see because you have the most experience, you have the biggest name, you've been there the longest, it's your practice. I couldn't get away from seeing all the patients in my own practice until I taught all my other therapists how to use the newbie. Now they're willing to go to any other therapist, and they're turning into clinical wizards within the first 3 or 4 sessions. So it levels the playing field as a practice owner, where you can just hire a clinician for the person they are, for their personality, and teach them how to use this device as an adjunct to what they're already doing. And they're going to turn into clinical wizards, getting great patient outcomes. And what happens is, the patients here, I'm going to get better quicker. I'm going to, you're going to find the spots right away. They immediately start thinking, and almost every single patient, when you tell those 3 things to, before they leave on their first visit, they're going to tell you about their their Aunt Sally, or their Uncle Rick, or a spouse that is doing a internship somewhere out of the state. Can we bring them in, and would this thing help them? And so you immediately get reproducible. Like I call them patient evangelists. They just literally will not quit talking about the experience they had for physical therapy.
After that clip from Jason, we're going to dive a little deeper into sales. This clip is from episode 43 with Mark DeAnda, who owns Optimum Physiotherapy Clinic here in San Antonio, Texas, or nearby, I say here, just down the road from Austin. And earlier in this episode, Mark talks about his process and the decision he made to transition from being all insurance to becoming a hybrid practice. And he has settled on a ratio of about 50-50, about half of his revenue from insurance reimbursement and about half is direct cash pay, where patients are paying him directly for his services. And in this clip, he's talking about how he approaches a first session with new patients, and especially emphasizes the importance of drawing out their emotions and feelings about the situation they're in, talking to them about what it is that they're missing out on, what they want to do, and really getting them to buy into this physical therapy journey that they're about to embark on together. So here's Mark DeAnda.
Just understand, like, what are their goals? Really talk about their goals and really understand the drive of those goals. And if that means asking how you feel about your situation, how do you feel about your goal and getting there, that's a very good question. I think it's a question that's not asked a lot, Garrett. How do you feel about this situation? How do you feel about your goals? And I think you'll be surprised when you start asking your clients that. You'll be surprised about the reaction that you get from people. It was surprising to me. But once you have emotion on the table, I think people are much more interested on what you have to offer, as opposed to you just kind of just not going through the evaluation the same way. You just confirming you have the script. Don't get me wrong, that's powerful. Coming from a medical doctor or orthopedic, a script to a physical therapy office, that transfers authority to the therapist. That's great, but it's not all. That we need to do more than that. We need to do more, and doing those things, I think, is crucial, and that'll really move towards them getting on the same page with you and agreeing to your plan of care that you want to. That you're putting together for them, which is the best plan of care, right? We're doctors of physical therapy. It's who better to know how to rehab them but than a doctor of physical therapy. So them agreeing to our plan of care is exactly what they need to do. You would be surprised, how far people may come away from that, and not forget, we can't just assume like these clients or these patients walking in are just going to, do what we say because we're the physical therapists. No, we need to get some emotional investment in the conversation. We need to draw that out of them. We need some verbal confirmation. All of that is crucial, and that puts them on your path to complete your plan of care, which includes your cash services.
I hope you enjoyed that clip from Mark. Now we're going to transition here to talking about another very important element of running a practice, and that is hiring, recruiting, hiring, and leading a team. And my guest in episode 57 was Brian Gallagher, who had his own practice for many years, actually won National Practice of the Year back in the early 2000s. And since then, for 20 years or so, has been coaching and consulting other practice owners on how to effectively run a business. And he has services everything from billing to compliance training, virtual front desk, does a lot of verification of benefits, all different things. But his education has helped dozens that I personally know and hundreds of other practice owners be successful in running and owning a physical therapy business. So Brian is a wonderful resource, a wealth of knowledge. And in this clip, he talks about the challenge of hiring and training and continuing to lead a team of people. I love his perspective on how to establish a healthy, vibrant team and culture. And then in this clip, he also shares one specific strategy towards the end that can help you get your team maximally engaged. So here is Brian Gallagher from episode 57.
So I would say the number one challenge, whether it's big or small, and I've worked with, clients that had over 400 offices. I've worked with clients that are just starting up and just getting their funds and everything in between. It's how do I create a company culture whereby the people who assemble around me are contributing to the best of their ability to the overall goals, products, successful actions of why we created this company to begin with. That's the challenge, really. And then someday you hang your shingle and you say, I'm going to run my own practice. I'm going to have my own business. And what you fail to realize is being the best PT, being the best player on the field doesn't mean you're going to be the best team coach. Doesn't mean you're going to cultivate the best camaraderie, the best abilities of those around you. And that needs to be taught. That's not inherent to people. You need to learn how to instill in people how to flourish and prosper as a person and a being and as a professional. I would say my number one most successful action of disseminated advice is to get my owners or people looking to be owners to comprehend the idea that you're embarking on a new profession. You're embarking on a new chapter of your life as a CEO and owner. You're now invested in seeing that those closest to you are flourishing and prospering both personally and professionally. And that's what will build you a culture, because transparency breeds trust. And if you can role model and you can be transparent with those around you, they're going to follow you anywhere and they're going to want to be a part of your game because you're protecting their interests as well as your own. I like to dig down even deeper and let's give some tools. Let's give some successful actions. So to your point, which your questions have been fabulous. If I'm a small private practice owner and I'm watching this right now and say, okay, Brian, well, give me something. What do I do? Give me a doingness. Like, what would I do to achieve what you're asking me to do? Here's something you could do. It's called the 10-minute meeting. Okay. What you do is you meet with every single one of your employees for 10 minutes once a month, and it's their time. It's for them to talk to you about what's on their mind, what's going on in their head, what they're feeling at the moment. I don't care if they come in and they talk about their puppies for the, I got two, Labradoodles and they're really cool. And I'm having a juggle going back from the clinic back home. And you just sit and listen and you just be present. Be there for your employee. Let them talk about, maybe they're going to talk about documentation. Maybe they're going to talk about innovation or technology or something they read or something they saw. Grant them their beingness, grant them their time, their altitude with you as the owner for you to be the listener. It's not a time for you to in-service them or anything like that. It's just, and I'll tell you what, your company morale will just inch up almost immediately because they're feeling heard and they're feeling valued, right? So the 10-minute meeting, I think that's just such a super important thing. And then here's another mechanical thing you can do. It's called the two-way street. We have something called a status sheet. If I were to hire you, Garrett, and I said, Garrett, welcome aboard. You're 3 years out of school. You're our new staff therapist, and you just accepted an $80,000 a year position. On your status sheet, I'm not going to give you an employment letter because that can be construed as a contract. I would never recommend that. I give you this status sheet. It's an Excel kind of, broken out status sheet. And it says, Garrett, you're working at this office. These are your start and stop times. These are the benefits you selected. Here's your pay. Oh, here's the compensation for the benefit package you did select. So your pay is $80,000, but your benefits add up to $9,000. So really you accepted an $89,000 a year position. And then on the other side, I say, okay, so on one hand, this is what we're bringing to your home every 2 weeks for you working here. On the other hand, here's what our expectations of you: 85% clinically efficient, 3.75 units of care, because we want to give you see that you're giving an abundance of care with each patient. Quality care as measured by Net Promoter Score, success stories, testimonials, outcome measures from our EMR system. You see what I'm saying? My point is, when people start off working for you and they get the two-way street, like, oh, okay, I accepted this position to get this pay, this benefits, this number of time off, blah, blah, blah. In exchange, I'm held accountable to deliver this, this, and this. And if those don't match up, there's going to be total justification for a meeting, for a sit down. I think people respond really, really well to that degree of transparency. So there's two mechanical things you can do as an employer that's really going to set the stage for a great company culture.
Thank you so much for listening to the Undercurrent podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how NeuFit and the Newbie can impact your life, please visit our website at www.new.fit. That's NEU.fit. So you can learn more about how it might integrate into your professional practice, how you can use it as a patient, and you can also connect with our team there.
In our next clip, we're going to pull from episode 72, where my guest was Greg Todd. And Greg talks about the set of skills that are required to be a successful practice owner that you don't learn at all in physical therapy school or chiropractic school. He talked about his experiences initially approaching physicians for referrals and failing, how he went to 18 offices and didn't get a single referral. And then he finally figured out some of the skills of communication, figured out how people, how they will act in their own self-interest, and how he needs to lead by giving value to others first in order to initiate the relationship. So he talks about his perspective on building the sets of skills that are necessary to be an effective, successful practice owner, and then a little bit about how to attract patients. Of course, marketing being one of those important sets of skills that you need to be an effective practice owner. So he talks a little bit about that as well. Enjoy this clip with Greg Todd.
We went to school, and many of us spent anywhere between 3 to 5 years learning how to practice on people. We spent less than 3 to 5 hours learning how to get people to practice on. So I realized that there's a couple things. I was going to have to learn skill sets that I didn't learn in traditional schooling. I was going to have to learn how to get customers. I was going to learn how to talk to people before they trusted me. I was going to have to learn marketing, which is the art and science of getting people to desire more and more of what I have, whether it's a product, it's a service, it's an opportunity. I didn't know how to do that. What she told me that I could explain things well, and I empowered her. And that's the reason why she continued to work with me for 4 years. That's the top tennis player I was working with. But that only works if somebody's working with you. It didn't work to get people. And so I went on a path from late 2007 to present day to learn how to get people to actually have a desire to work with me, how to become a person of preeminence, which is someone that understands someone's problems better than them, how to be someone that can convey my message to someone that makes them look at me as a person of preeminence, a person of authority, and how to get them to become my client, which is how to sell them. And what I've come to realize is that I had to learn how to sell, which is I had to learn how to uncover the value of what I had to offer so well that people are happy to take out their wallet and pay me money for the value that I'm giving to them. My 3 ways are social, organic traffic, partnerships, which could be physicians, it could be other healthcare providers, chiropractors, other physical therapists, other occupational therapists, massage therapists, and businesses, right? It could be any business that has the types of clients that you are looking for. So where does your client shop? Where does your client get their food from? Where does your client work out? Where does your client hang out on the weekends? Where does your client go to with regards to community events? Where does your client buy their clothes from, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the 3 ways. And so physicians is partnerships, and that's one of the ways. What I realize is that every physician or every business wants this one thing. Pretty much all of them, you know what they want? They want more business. They want more customers. So what I realized is as I started to work on developing my skill set on how to get more customers, and I started to build my own community base, my own fan base. And then I said to them, hey, I have a leverage piece that you don't have. I have a client base that you don't have access to. I would love to put you in front of my client base. That's what I want to do. I want to put you in front of my client base. I'm going to do that through my newsletter. I'm going to do that through my podcast. I'm going to do that through my social media channel. I want to put you in front of my people so my people know about you so I can grow your business. So when I started doing that, now I started to have the leverage over them, And now they wanted to work with me because I was actually giving them something they wanted, which is attention. And every business wants that. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I learned from a leverage standpoint is just give people what it is that they're actually looking for. And I know we spent a ton of time learning our amazing skills, having all these cool gadgets in our facilities, but really what they care about is how is this going to feed my bottom line? How is it going to pad my pocket? And once I started doing that, I now held the leverage, and now people wanted to rock with me. And that's how I did it.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that clip with Greg Todd. And now for the final clip of this recap episode. This is from episode 93 with Jamie Schreier. And he shares a very interesting, compelling perspective on the psychology of pricing and perceived value. So we're going to close this episode with a clip that I believe is going to actually open our minds to some new ways of thinking about our business and how it's positioned and how that influences the psychology of our patients who are ultimately the customers who support our respective businesses. Here's a clip from episode 93 with Jamie Schreier.
Let's use neuropathy. There's a lot of people that have it.
Yeah, tens of millions in this country alone. It's a crazy number.
So there's a ton of people. It's well known. Like if you say neuropathy, people in that world that either have it or know someone that has it, they understand it. The people that don't have it, that are like, it doesn't really matter anyways. So it's easier to message that, So then it's a matter of, okay, so if we're going to work with neuropathy, are we going to be the residents in of neuropathy, or are we going to be the JW of neuropathy? Well, what's the difference? The difference is the price point. Because if you are opening up to a much bigger audience, then it's going to be based a lot on price, especially if there's other things in that market that are, quote, similar, meaning tools and technologies to treat neuropathy. So the price will determine the people's perspective. In other words, you don't need to drive a BMW to get to point A to point B, but there's a lot of people that have BMWs. Now, you could just have a nice little Volkswagen. And there's some people that have Volkswagens. Probably a lot of people have Volkswagens. Perhaps more people have Volkswagens than BMWs. But the difference is the price point. The difference is the marketing. So if you choose, you're like, you know what? We're going to be the Ritz-Carlton of the diabetic neuropathy world. Meaning we're going to price our services and the value of our services as such to represent that. So we're going to be in a position in our marketplace that nobody can touch. Nobody can touch. We're going to separate ourselves from the masses. This isn't going to be a $99 treatment. We're going to charge $2,500. And that's going to be 10 sessions or 7 sessions or 60 days of our program. And when you focus on that, and you obviously learn how to have a sales conversation around that, which is, we can get into that if you'd like, or it could be another episode or something. There's no doubt people will write checks. So when you position your clinic as the Ritz-Carlton, you're going to command more money, but your customers also expect more. So it's the whole positioning of people aren't buying the newbie. What people are buying is the outcome. They're buying the results. They're buying the things of why they're in there. And it's our job to make sure that we're selling a great saying is we sell their future, not your features. And so many of us sell the features, the bells and whistles that we think are so cool. But if someone's have difficulty walking, they don't care about that. They want to not just walk. They don't want to feel like an outcast, not able to walk. They don't want to be in a situation that they're not able to hang with friends and relatives because they can't walk because of their diabetic neuropathy. That's what you're selling. So your job is to figure out, well, Are you the JW? Are you the Sheraton, mid-level, right? Or are you the Residence Inn? Again, from a financial standpoint, they're all multi-million-dollar brands. But we're doing this to decide where you want to come in at. Because if you want more people, like just significantly more people, then your price is going to be low. But if you're like, I can't handle that many people, it's just me and a couple other therapists, I'd rather have less volume and hire, less people and work on them and do our thing, and I'd rather charge more, then you're going to be more like the Ritz-Carlton.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this recap episode. I think it's clear that there's a lot to running a business, and it's a different skill set than it takes to be a good clinician. So we see themes like how innovation and premium services and how we position ourselves and charge and have cash services and effective branding. So yeah, these can all help drive profitability. And remember, there's no harm, right? It's not bad to earn a profit. It's actually necessary. Profitability is important if you want to have a sustainable practice and be able to treat people in the first place, and be able to do that for a long period of time. So I hope you found value in this episode. I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway. So please send me a DM or respond in the comments here, and stay tuned for part 3 of this episode 100 recap series, where we dive into the mindset, leadership, and personal development strategies that really stand out from the first 100 episodes. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.